afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Zintle Letlaka, and I will be hosting you today as we have this very important conversation where we are zoning in on mental health in the workplace. Given that our workplaces are wherever we are, this is a conversation that impacts all of us at any and every point in our lives right now. So thank you for making the time, ABSA colleagues, from wherever you are across the ABSA universe and continent. An absolutely huge welcome to you as part of the ABSA Africa Team United. And if you are joining us on LinkedIn from outside of ABSA, a warm welcome to you. Thank you to all of our connections and LinkedIn followers for taking the time out to have this conversation with ABSA around mental health in the workplace, because this is something that obviously doesn't just affect us. This is one of a number of conversations that we are having in the ABSA family around mental health in the workplace, some of which taking place internally and externally, and one that we hope that you can join and contribute to. I am not alone today. I am with our group head of health and wellness, Dr. Lesego Rametsi. Firstly, please say hello. Thank you so very much for not only joining us, but for championing these conversations as something that we should be having. We're also joined by Zanele Mlangeni, who is from the ABSA Group. She's a business manager at the CIB People and Culture function at CIB. Hello, Zanele, and thank you so much for joining us. The two colleagues who join me today are going to be contributing to this conversation, answering a number of questions that we received already from colleagues, but also taking questions from you as the audience that's listening in today. So do please interact with us on the comments section. Send through any questions you have. ABSA colleagues, please make use of Workplace as you normally do. And if you are joining us on LinkedIn, please also make use of the comments section in LinkedIn to help us drive the conversation and to contribute to the broad spectrum of topics and themes and experiences around mental health in the workplace. I'm going to start by looking at some of the context that was created around us building this conversation. And that is something that is not only related to the pandemic, as we have seen a lot of changes that impact mental health in the workplace during that time, but also something that is pervasive even before the pandemic hit. Mental health is something that affects all of us in some way or another, because mental health is health. And it is interesting to see that statistics show us that at least 1 in 4 people will deal with a mental health issue at some point in their lifetime, something that requires us to be aware of it for ourselves, but also for the people who are in our care at work, at home, and who we are in relationship with in society in general. When we look at some of the stats that we've seen, and I'm saying this, Dr. Lesego, before I shoot to you, because I marveled when I received these stats and I looked at some of these. We looked at some of the research that we got through partners of ours that we work with in the wellness space. And they looked at surveys across globally and across a number of institutions that they work with in SA and across the continent. What was interesting for me is that there's such a strong dynamic between colleagues who have experienced workload changes while they are on site and had to remain on site, and colleagues who experienced workload changes while they are off site and having to manage the dynamic of working from home. But just interestingly, in 2019, 34% of staff experienced high workloads, whereas when we look at that now, we saw that change to 31% who saw high workloads in 2021. And that could be attributed to the fact that there were a lot of colleagues who still remained on site and their workloads actually seemed to diminish. Whereas when we look at work hour changes, the amount of time that we're actually spending working, we saw in 2019 that 34% of staff worked more than 55 hours a week, which is already much more than what a normal work week should be. But then what we saw is that remote workers during the pandemic, that grew by 8%. To 42% of them now working more than 55 hours a week. So this became now more prevalent, whereas our on-site workers and those staff decreased by 5% to 29%. So interesting to set the context around the fact that mental health in the workplace, workload and work hours do not affect everyone in the same way. We're going to have a discussion today that looks at a number of the dynamics and different experiences that people have had. And so whatever your experience, whether you've had to continue working in the office or on site, depending on what kind of work you have, or whether you have had to move to a work from home situation or even balance a hybrid, today's conversation will be taking all that into account, and we would like to hear about your experience. I'm going to shift to Dr. Lesego now. After looking at those stats and understanding a bit of that context, why are we, why are we having this conversation, Dr. Lesego? I think it's an important one for us to understand, given the taboo around mental health, given how people struggle to have this conversation in general. Why is this something that ABSA wants to talk about?
Zintle, thank you so much, and good afternoon to Zanele and to all the other colleagues that have joined us this afternoon. As we continue to navigate these unprecedented times due to COVID-19 pandemic, which is really driven by a contagion that impacts on our physical health, it is becoming increasingly evident that the mental health ramifications of this pandemic will remain with us long after we have dealt with COVID-19. So if you look at, current projections, it is estimated that, in the next 2 years, mental health will be the biggest cause of, hospitalization going forward. But what is important also, Zintle, is to recognize that, you did mention a stat of one in 4 people will battle with mental health in their lifetime. We're now looking at 1 in 3, 1 in 2, depending on the stats that you use. But before we delve into that, I want to take an opportunity to pass my sincerest sympathies to colleagues that have lost a loved one during this time. And in addition, I'd like to spare thought to all our colleagues that are in hospital currently fighting COVID-19 or at home, and also for those of our colleagues who are caring for their loved ones. In addition, I want to acknowledge colleagues who are battling during this time, mentally or emotionally, be it due to anxiety, depression, any stress-related issue, to say to them that we are here, help is available, please do reach out. July is traditionally Mental Health Awareness Month, but at ABSA, our aspiration is to make mental health awareness an everyday discussion. And we really look into storytelling, sharing, and allowing each other and every one of our 42,000 colleagues to show up in their most authentic self and really meeting them where they at. And I think Zanele sharing her story with us today, bravely so, really is testament to the type of environment that we want to create and build internally. ABSA, it's all about bringing possibilities to life. And we believe that there is no health or well-being without mental health. Failure to address mental health challenges impedes on an individual's creativity. And we do know that for individuals to contribute meaningfully, they have to really have a good mental health and well-being. And through creativity, people can really unlock their potential, thrive, and these are the very traits that are at the core of bringing possibilities to life. I want to really share a few stats, Zintle, around the cost of mental health. We do know that annually in South Africa, the direct cost of mental health sits at 400, and actually mental ill health sits at 488 million rands per annum. And this represents 5% of the total health budget. And these are the direct costs. So these are costs related to, psychologists, psychiatrists, medication, and if required, hospitalization. But there are also indirect costs. So these indirect costs have been estimated to be sitting at 29.6 billion rands. And these are associated with loss of earnings, loss of revenue taxes, absenteeism, presenteeism, the impact, mental health will have on team dynamics, productivity, and ultimately the impact on the bottom line. So we have really come at a space where we recognize that, looking at mental health and mental ill health, it's no longer a nice to have, but a business imperative. So at ABSA, we recognize that for our colleagues to fully thrive, we have to create a space where we speak about mental health as we do speak about physical health. We believe in data-led and insight-driven strategies that allow us to be responsive and implement customized solutions that are aimed at addressing some of the core drivers. And these core drivers, they fall into two categories, of organizational factors and also individual factors. So I'll leave it here for now, Zintle, so that later on we can delve into some of these strategies that I'm alluding to. Back to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Lesego. I think a lot of time is actually spent, and thank you for those stats. There is such a huge impact, I think, economic impact, both macro and micro, that comes from ill health, mental ill health, and I'm glad that you made that distinction, that we perhaps as a corporate sector have ignored over the years and is only now starting to take center stage. I actually want to go a little bit more into the people element and the cost of what it is that the individual loses at that time. And I can imagine the time away from family, the increased stress from loss of income and those kind of things. I want us to quickly have a discussion on some of the challenges that employees are faced with when it comes to managing and looking after their mental health in the workplace.
Thanks, Zintle. So you've mentioned, loss of time away at work, and for those that that time is prolonged, if you utilize your sick leave provision, in some instances it might be unpaid leave, but fortunately, within the organization we do have policies that really support colleagues in those instances. We do have provision for additional sick leave for those colleagues that a lot of our colleagues end up tapping into the medical incapacity benefits as well. So that's something that we're seeing as an emerging trend, and we think that this trend will continue also into the future, given the stats that I've mentioned earlier. In addition, when colleagues we do know when people suffer from mental ill health, generally there will be impact on the primary relationships at home, and sometimes it might spill over also at work. And when there are challenges with conflict at home, it also can spill over into the family unit as well. So there are repercussions that do not only sit with the individual themselves. So it will be individual, the micro, family unit, and in some instances it can spill over into extended families and also into the work environment as well. And in addition to that, we have seen that people in the early phases, it can also impact on the person's ability to perform at work. And if people do not perform to the level that is required, it also impacts on the ability to also earn, bonuses if you have a system where you have incentive-driven system. So it's not only about looking at, the now and the present. There are some downstream implications as well, and long-term as well.
Plenty of downstream implications, those that we're aware of and some that we perhaps aren't even aware of yet. So thank you, Dr. Lesego, for raising some of those. I want to take a bit more now of a personal approach to this. We've looked at the theory, we've looked at the stats, and we've brought in Zanele Mlangeni to give us her personal account of an experience that she's had around mental ill health. And firstly, Zanele, thank you so much for being willing to share your story with us. I opened up by talking about the stigma around discussing mental health, and so great to see colleagues, individuals coming forward with their stories so that we can have open and honest conversations and learn from each other, and also understand how to not only spot the signs and prevent it, but also how to support each other. So welcome again, and thank you so very much for joining us, Zanele. Hi. So again, health, mental health in general, has a very broad spectrum and a number of things. Your specific mental health issue was around burnout. Can you tell us a bit about that and, when it took place, when you started seeing the signs and what that looked like for you and how you navigated that space?
Sure, great. Thanks, Zintle. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, Doc, again. Zintle, I suffered burnout in 2019, yeah, so that was pre-COVID. And leading up to that, there were so many signs that I was at the brink of a burnout, but I was none the wiser. I wasn't aware of what was happening. I was young at the peak of my career, in my element, enjoying my work, and giving my all with everything that I had to do. Starting my career at ABSA in 2011, I joined the company in a new position, and in that position, given that it was a new one, I had to make up or I had to design that position myself and kind of figure out the ropes on my own. Fast forward 3 years later, I got asked to assume another role, which was a new role as well in the organization in that specific area. And it was so tough actually in that role because I was one of the youngest people sitting around a table with senior execs, and they were male. So you can imagine the pressure that came with being in that role. One, yes, I had a supportive team. The guys were very supportive and, willing to help me along the way. But the pressure also sat with me because I didn't want to fail. Failure for me was never an option. So I worked extra hard. And the more I gave, the more that was given to me because I showed that I had capability, right? And with that added pressure, being in a financial services, it doesn't stop. You'll deliver on something and then something else comes up. So you never get a chance to take a break. And for me, I was one of those people that if I'm on leave, you'll find me still online, logging on and doing some work. It's only when I was at the country where I couldn't take my laptop that I'd completely switch off, but I never did switch off. And, I went from a point of being at my peak to I'm constantly feeling tired. I was constantly tired, but I didn't make a thing of it because there was always an explanation as to why am I tired. I'm tired because, this week was rough. I worked extra hard or I worked through the night in some instances. So there was always an explanation for why I'm feeling tired. But the tiredness got excessive to a point where it was chronic fatigue. But even with that, right, I'm fatigued because I've been working so hard during the year. I haven't taken leave in a long time, and then I'll take leave. You come back and then you're still feeling like, okay, I'm fine, I'm rejuvenated, I can still continue to push harder. And, it was just that repetitive cycle where I was just pushing and, doing the best and giving the best of myself and also trying to achieve my career aspirations. So I wasn't aware or I didn't pay much attention to the obvious signs that were coming about around fatigue and sleep. I slept quite a lot because I was always so tired. It was another explanation. I was always so tired. I developed anxiety, which also I wasn't aware that I was going through bouts of anxiety because I'd have like random chest pains. And to me, it was like, I don't know what this is. It's just a random pain and I'd ignore it. But in hindsight, it was actually an anxiety chest pain. And from that, I went into a space of now illness. I was constantly sick, going from someone who was never sick. If I had a flu, it was like once every 3 years that I'll be down with a flu or something. But I would get random illnesses, viral infections out of nowhere. I remember the one that I had was in 2016. I was on holiday, and 2 days before I had to come home, I felt sick. And I was glad that I was coming back 2 days and that I'm not far away from home. And when I got back, I was booked off for a further 10 days because I was not well. 6 months down the line, I was also woke up feeling quite sick. My eyes were swollen. I couldn't even open my one eye. I had rash on my face. But even then, I wasn't alerted to do something. I didn't think that something is wrong. I just thought it must have been something I ate 2 days ago. Meanwhile, my body was signaling me. After the continuous illness, then it accelerated into medical procedures now. So 3 years in a row, since 2017, I had medical procedures. I had one major one in 2017, and I was out of work for 6 weeks. In that 6 weeks, the first week I could do nothing. I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, nothing. Second week was making slow progress. By the third week, I'm like, I'm up, I can do some things. I picked up my laptop and I was busy working, as opposed to actually resting for the full 6 weeks that I've been given off. So it has always been that cycle. Given the fact that it's a fast-paced environment, I was always on a hamster wheel, and I didn't make a thing of it because I really, really enjoyed my work and loved the work that I do, until it got to a point where I couldn't handle the fatigue anymore. I'd taken everything that I could take, all the supplements you can think of, and nothing was working. And 2019 March was when it really hit me, because then it started affecting my physiology. I developed such a horrible back pain. And when that happened, again, Zanele made an excuse. I thought I wasn't sitting properly in my chair. This pain will go away. But after 2 weeks of that excruciating pain, I went to the physio to go check out what the problem was. And that's when my journey with the physio started. After 2 months of this pain not getting better, I consulted with a neurospecialist that specializes in spinal injury. And he confirmed that I had acute lower back pain. And he said, if you don't get better within 30 days, come back. We're going to have to do an op on your back. And I thought, there's no ways I'm operating on my back. I walked away from this. I lived with that pain for a good 6 months. I remember at one point trying to get ready for work, and I needed to put my stockings on. So I couldn't just, half bend. I literally had to sit on the floor to wear my stockings, sit on the floor to put on my shoes, because it was that bad. I couldn't do stuff for myself that I normally would do. Everything was just such a mission. I couldn't sit for long periods of time without my back hurting. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't exercise. So there was a whole lot of things that were building up physically for me. And it started now developing into, bits of emotional distress as well. And as much as I was fighting these things, some days were good, some days were not, So I went into a place of withdrawal, pulling away from friends, pulling away from family and loved ones, and people just wanting to reach out and help. But I didn't want the pity. I didn't want people feeling sorry for me. And also I didn't want to say, this is what's happening. I wanted to deal with it myself, because I've always known how to fix myself, if you want to call it that. So I went into a place where I isolated. I remember the one day, it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd gone to the gym just to do some stretch exercises with one of the personal trainers, just to help rehabilitate my back. And he asked me to just, lean forward and touch my toes to stretch. And that's when it hit me, because I couldn't even so much as bend my neck, never mind touch my toes. And I remember lifting my head up and crying, because I just couldn't understand, how did I get here? How did I get here? And will I ever come out of this place? Will I ever come out? It really broke me. And I continued, got back home, showered, and went to work as if nothing had happened, and carried on with work. Fast forward to 2020, still dealing the same back issues. By then, I had a physiotherapist and a chiropractor that I was seeing on a weekly basis, at least twice a week. And by then, my medical savings have been exhausted. I'm spending out of my own pocket to pay for these expenses. And 2020 came, and that's when, for the first time, it actually hit me that I need to do something about this. Being in the space that I'm in now, in the people and culture space, where we're at the forefront of this. When the pandemic happened, and we had gone into lockdown, I think 2 weeks before the national lockdown. So we're already running around trying to implement and put things in place to support colleagues where needed, right? So when we went officially into national lockdown, the pace even got faster and faster, and we're just busy. And I remember one Friday, I had a regular check-in with my line manager, and we were talking, and I said to her, listen, I need to just be honest here. I'm overwhelmed. There's a lot that is on my plate, and I don't think I'm going to get to everything, and I'm worried I'm going to drop some balls here. So I just wanted to know that my plate is full at the moment, and yeah. And then she said to me, okay, how can we help you? Where can we, what can I take off your shoulders? And I said to her, I'll let you know when the time comes if I do need the help. Also, it was a part of me feeling bad that all the other team members are also just as stretched and as swamped as I am. So who are we going to give what to, So I carried on, the following week carried on. And then Friday of the following week, I just couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't get out of bed. I was sitting with a massive, massive chest pain. Just sitting up for me was painful. And I actually sat with that feeling at that time. And it dawned on me that whenever I had these chest pains, it was because I was anxious about something. And I realized I struggled with anxiety attack. And I took some time off. I messaged my line manager and I told her, I'm not feeling well. I can't work. I've handed over the deliverables for today to another colleague. This is what I've given off of my plate. And I literally shut down on Friday. The whole weekend, I looked at nothing work related. I slept the whole weekend. Only woke up, I think, probably on Tuesday, but I still continued to be on leave. I went back to work after 2.5 weeks. And when I went back, I was in a different space. I was feeling a little bit better. I was not 100%, but I was a little bit better. And I started doing things differently and putting a bit more boundaries in place and being deliberate about my well-being and my mental health and my physical well-being. I'm still on a journey and on a road to recovery. I'm not 100% there yet in terms of my back problems, but baby steps. I'm making progress. I'll pause there for now, Zintle. Over to you.
Sure. Unbelievable. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to your story. And I'm balancing between having to facilitate this conversation and relating so much to everything that you're saying in a personal capacity. And so I can't thank you enough. I'm seeing a lot of commentary on all of our platforms, really people identifying with your story, thanking you for sharing it, for your bravery, especially given that this is such a difficult conversation to have, even with people who we are close to, with our loved ones, with our line managers and friends, let alone having it in a public space. So kudos to you. Firstly, thank you so much, Zanele. I'm interested mostly in the fact that when your story began, it sounded like the average corporate person's life story. We in all organizations, many that I've worked in, and many that our audience today are potentially part of, we all pride ourselves on high performance environments. We pride ourselves on getting it done. We pride ourselves on hiring people who go above and beyond the call of duty always. And so it is something that becomes inculcated in our culture that we expect that people will always perform at that very high level. And at no point, perhaps, do we give thought to the fact that this might not be working out for them, or it might be hurting them in ways that are not immediately visible to us in the beginning. When you got towards the end of your story and you started talking about back pains and some of the health issues, my first thought was, oh, mine will never get that bad. That will never happen to me, is instinctively what will happen, because you think, oh, I've got this under control. I'll go on leave for 2 weeks a year. I'll spend my December shutting down and I'll be fine. I'll go for a massage every once in a while when I'm too stressed. But the truth of the matter is that we have no knowledge or control over how this starts to affect our physiology and our bodies, our minds, and even our relationships. And so important for us to have a conversation around some of the hidden symptoms and the hidden impact around mental health and ill health, and what that starts to look like when we really spend time listening to ourselves and listening to our bodies. I'm going to go again to some stats that we've seen. The World Health Organization, for example, highlighted that the average number of work hours increased by 10% when it came to the pandemic. And for those people who were working 55 hours or more a week, there was a 35% higher risk of strokes, a 17% higher risk of dying from heart disease, compared with a working week of 35 to 40 hours, which is obviously the recommended amount of time that we should be spending at our desk. And I know that everyone who is dialed in here is probably guilty of being in the bracket of 55 hours and above. Now, we've always associated these risks with middle-aged or older men. And so very triggering for me to listen to someone who is young in the prime of their life talk to some of the symptoms and impact that we are seeing here. Really something that should make all of us sit up and take notice and spend a bit more time listening to our bodies and not saying things like, oh, this pain should go away, I'm just a little tired, or those kind of things, but really taking the time to go in and check to get checked up. So thank you again so much for sharing that, Zanele. And I'm going to come back to you a little bit later to discuss the support that you received from the organization. You did already touch on the fact that your line manager was open to having the conversation and open to seeing how they could take some things off of your plate. I want us to have a bit of a broader conversation a little later around what it is that someone who is in that position really needs, not only from a taking work off your plate, but in other areas of their lives. What I am going to do now, though, is I'm going to jump back to you, Dr. Lesego, and think about, having heard Zanele's story and having now just had this look at the fact that we do work in organizations that have very high expectations of us. And I know that this is something that you are very passionate about in terms of an organization that gives as much as it expects from colleagues. So I want to talk to you a bit around some of the support that you think in situations like Zanele's and many colleagues who have identified with it in some ways, and some colleagues saying her story reads like a diary entry of their own. What are some of the ways that in your championing this culture and revolution around health and wellness in organizations are the ways that you think colleagues that are going through what Zanele has gone through can expect in terms of support?
Zintle, thank you for that. I just want to say to Zanele, thank you. I've heard Zanele talk so passionately, about her story. And I'm always filled with gratitude, for her generosity and her openness to really share her story. I'm a firm believer of storytelling. I believe that stories can save lives. And, given what the feedback that you've given, that there's quite a lot of colleagues that can really, that are probably in the same boat as we speak, that relates to Zanele's story. I'm quite encouraged that these conversations are happening. And, if there's a colleague out there that needs assistance, it's important that you reach out. If you want more information, you can send an email to wellness@absa.co.za, and we'll certainly make sure that you get the appropriate support and assistance currently. So, Zintle, back to your question. I did allude to the fact that, our strategies are data-driven and are insights-led. So we look at, reports from our partners, our EAP partners, and those inform, our strategies on what is it that we should be looking into. And we both look at organizational factors and also individual or colleague factors. And these are anchored by organizational policies, be it our leave policy, wellness policy, disability policies, and these are supported by appropriate people practices. But I need to pause at this juncture, Zintle, and ask myself a question. What is it, what is it about our culture that drives, this level of performance. And the reason I'm saying that is sometimes we equate being busy to performance. And I mean, I'm listening to Zanele, and I know it implies, even for me, I've worked so many times, even when I was on leave. And we have to ask ourselves the question that, what is it about our culture that really drives us to work even when we're supposed to be resting? I do not have an answer for that. And I think as a collective, we really have to start asking that question, and have an open discussion about that. I think what's important also as we create this environment where colleagues can thrive, it's really around how do we create an environment which is free of stigma and discrimination associated with mental illness. But it also goes a step further. How do we start viewing then, when people say I'm not okay as a sign of strength? Because I'm of the view that when somebody acknowledges where they're at, we have to be in a position to really rally around them and give them the appropriate support. Because seeking for help, it's not a sign of weakness. Seeking for help, in my books, it's actually a sign of help. It's you not giving up. It's you refusing to give up. So it is that, philosophy and ethos that we really align to. So from a work point of view, we do have an employee assistance program that's available to all our colleagues, supported by ICAS, which is colleagues can reach out 24/7, 0800 611 262. We also have an app available where colleagues can have they have access to a live chat during office hours, and I really encourage to use for colleagues to use those avenues that are available. From an organization point of view, we do recognize that the relationship between the colleague and the line manager is of utmost importance in this regard, and it's something that Zanele touched on. So as part of our ongoing, mental health program, we are now looking at empowering line managers as first aiders from a mental health point of view. So mental health first aiders, so that they are empowered with information on, what to look out for as early warning signs, because it's important with any health condition. It's better if it's recognized early on so that we can prevent some of the long-term complications. So in essence, we really want all of our line managers to go through this training so that they are better placed to identify colleagues that are at risk, and also have a heightened level of suspicion in instances where a colleague might be exhibiting some of the early warning signs that they might be grappling with mental illness issues. In addition, I really implore on all our colleagues to really take time off. This has been a challenging time for all of us. I am yet to meet a colleague that is not battling with a challenge of one sort or the other. And it's really important that we take time out. Let us create boundaries. It's important that you have an open line of communication with your line manager, and make sure that you create boundaries so that you can have a healthy working relationship. And also it's important that you set boundaries on, when it's advisable to have a meeting, when it's not, when it does not suit you. And it's only when we have those conversations, where the tire meets the tar, that we can really have an impact on some of these challenges. I'll take it back to you, Zintle. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm hearing, and is my boss online? I'm hearing from that we should have a culture of pushing back a little bit more, or maybe pushing back is the wrong word, because that's one I think that most people are scared to adopt in terms of language. But setting boundaries around mental health, especially when we look at, like I said, the micro impact on us as individuals, but also what we start seeing as macro impacts and how it impacts our organizations overall. In terms of costs and time away from the office. I think most importantly, when you look at the time that the individual has lost and the quality of life. When I think of your story, Zanele, not only the medical savings that were depleted and you had to start looking at paying those financial costs yourself, but the fact that you were not able to enjoy your time off, your weekends, your vacations as much. There's so much quality of life. There's so much relational and social time that's been lost. And so, as Dr. Lesego said, prevention is really better than cure. Dr. Lesego, I'm going to stick to you just for one quick question around the fact that when we think about prevention is better than cure, we've grown up knowing that a health screening is something that perhaps we should be doing every year. So go for your flu vaccine, go to your doctor once a year and do a general screening. Why is mental health not something that we think about in the same way? And is it something we can think about in the same way? How can we screen ourselves? How can we do a check, a self screening perhaps, or a check with a professional to see that we are still okay?
Zintle, thanks a lot for that question. I'm a firm believer that we really have to do a mental health screening. So for most of our colleagues who belong to BankMed, there is an online mental health screening that's available. And I would really encourage you to do it maybe twice a year. It's online, so it's something that you can access, and it really gives you an overview of whether mentally you are in the green zone, amber zone, and or the red zone. And it also gives you an indication of, what the next steps are. So if you are in the green zone, it will give you information around how to maintain your mental well-being in that space. And then amber, if indicated, seek assistance, but also some of the tips that I'll touch on just now. And then red would be those who are at risk, and the guideline there would be to seek assistance immediately. So I'm going to give you just general tips on things that I believe are essential in maintaining mental well-being at a personal level. I did talk to some of the organizational staff earlier. So physical well-being, more and more we do realize that there is no mental well-being without physical well-being, and the same also apply. There is no physical well-being without mental well-being. So as a human being, both systems are quite intertwined. So from a physical well-being point of view, there are 4 things that I'm a firm believer that, if you are not paying attention to the following things, you really have to. So the first thing is around nutrition. Healthy nutrition, it's important for both our physical well-being and our mental well-being. The importance of exercise, I cannot, overstate the importance of exercise in our mental well-being. Studies are showing that, people who get regular exercise are by far less likely to develop anxiety and depression. But moreover, studies are showing that those who exercise and they have been diagnosed with depression and anxiety, they fare better as compared to those who do not exercise. When we exercise, we produce, the body's own happy hormones. Your endorphins, serotonin levels go up, and those are, our feel-good hormones. So it is important that we exercise. So exercise is not about going to the gym. It's about getting regular, 30-minute exercise every day, 5 days a week. Anything that gets your heart pumping and getting you out of breath, that's adequate. As long as you can sustain it for 30 to 45 minutes, that's adequate exercise. The third thing is around sleep. We all need 6 to 8 hours of sleep every day. Inadequate sleep. So I can see that Zanele is nodding her head. We do know that people who do not get 6 to 8 hours of sleep on a daily basis, they are more prone to depression, anxiety, and also there's now a direct link with cancer. So sleep is quite important. And the fourth one is around mindfulness. So mindfulness are, activities that are aimed at quietening the mind. So if you battle with racing thoughts, there are simple, exercises that you can employ in your daily life to really help you deal with stress through mindfulness. So from an ABSA point of view, we have catered for all that, even for those colleagues that are working remotely. If you want information on any of those aspects, please send an email to wellness@absa.co.za, and we will help you with all four. We have mindful circles every Monday. We have online gym sessions that each and every one of our colleagues can access from the comfort of their homes, where you can join the growing number of physically active colleagues. But I really implore on each and every one of you to really take the first step today to enhance your physical and mental well-being by taking those small steps. I'll pause here for now, Zintle. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Lesego. So many questions, so many comments coming in. Really glad that we're having a number of these conversations, because there is so much to cover that colleagues have just been inspired to ask. We're down to our last 15 minutes, and so I want to spend a bit of time just taking questions from colleagues to both of you. I want to highlight, and this is something that's going to go to both of you, please, ladies. When we talk about psychological safety and the fact that people are scared to come forward with some of the issues that they're facing because they're worried about how they'll be perceived in the workplace. So I may, for example, have a line manager who is understanding, but when I am taking 3 weeks off work, she's going to have to tell someone in my team to take up that work on my behalf. I may be concerned at how colleagues may perceive the fact that I'm not able to contribute to the team for a certain amount of time. How do we ensure that psychological safety and build in some of that sensitivity amongst each other as colleagues to support each other and to not perhaps stigmatize people who are in need of some time off or some interventions as lazy or not able to keep up with the pace, or not able to contribute as much as everyone else? And so I'm going to start with you, Zanele, because this is an experience you had and something you were worried about in terms of how you'll be perceived by the rest of the team. You had a specific dynamic on being young in the team and wanting to prove yourself. But I think in all aspects, this is something that comes across, where colleagues are just worried about, will their conversation with their line manager be safe, and how will it then be relayed and communicated to the rest of the team that they need support around that time. So if Zanele, you can give us just a brief 2-minute answer on your experience of that, and then Doc will shoot to you around some of the, I suppose, policies that we have in the organization around how we deal those sensitivities.
Awesome. Thanks, Zintle. I think that's a very important question, and that's the biggest challenge that most colleagues are facing around psychological safety. For me, I guess I put that aside because I knew it didn't define who I am and what I'm capable of. So when I stopped thinking about what will people think, or will I be judged differently, or will I be called weak in the team, I got the courage to stand up and say, I am not okay. And I realized that it's okay to not be okay. And the support that came with it actually was quite surprising on my part. And what we're seeing now in our space, in the corporate investment banking space, is that more and more people are coming forward, because of these awareness sessions that we've been having around mental health. More and more people are reaching out and saying, please help, I'm not okay. And I was excited when I heard Doc speak about the first mental aid first aiders for line managers, because I've had a number of line managers coming to me as well saying, Zanele, please help. I need something for my team. My team members are not in a good space. I don't know what else to do. Can you help? So more and more people are actually putting up their hands and saying, I need help. So for me, it really does send a positive message that the world of work is changing, and it's no longer about who walks with the head held up highest, but that it's okay to be vulnerable.
Sure. Thanks so much, Zanele. Doc?
Thanks, Zanele. Thanks a lot, Zintle. So, look, I think for me, what Zanele has just said, it really encapsulates what I wanted to say. I think most of the time we are held back by our own fears, and the fear of the unknown, the fear of how we think people are going to react, and that's really something that holds us back. Secondly, I think, psychological safety is a journey. Had Zanele not taken, the first step, she wouldn't have known how her line manager was going to react. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, if a colleague is of the view that his or her line manager will not be in a position to support them, we do have other support structures that colleagues can reach out to, be it through your people partner, through the wellness team, or through the team that supports me centrally. We will ensure that each colleague is supported. And in instances where colleagues, would like to remain, the intervention to remain confidential, we can do that. So if colleagues are in a space where they still are fearful, they feel that, they will not be supported or they will be stigmatized, in their setting, we have avenues that are available where we can support colleagues and still make sure that, they are protected. And when they are ready, we can take them on the journey that Zanele, has alluded to. But there is no pressure for anyone to come out if they are not ready. But what is important is we want colleagues to access the support that is available to each and every colleague within ABSA. So it's something that I really want to reiterate. Please do not suffer alone in silence. Support is available. And if you do not want to share with your team or your line manager as yet, we do have avenues that can support you whilst you remain, anonymous, or it remains in that confidential space. So our policies are very clear. What is shared in that space remains confidential. And we can assure you that you will not be, we will protect your confidentiality.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doc. I'm glad you touched on this because we did have a question from colleagues who were saying that they maybe don't have line managers who are already as apt at dealing with these matters as we would like them to be. I know that your training is still rolling out across the organization and it may take some time. So good to know that we have other options available to us as colleagues. Please do also go on to the intranet and you will find all of the resources that Wellness has available if you've missed anything that Dr. Lesego has mentioned here today. Doc, there's a question, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, where you said we need to have an open conversation around productivity and performance, this not resting in performance. There's been a number of questions, I think, around the pushback and the boundaries piece that I touched on earlier, but basically around the fact that with COVID and the and what we've seen as the impacts on jobs across industries, and in our own families, in our own communities, we have colleagues who would have either experienced job loss in their households or in their personal capacity, or now have to look after other family members who have experienced this in this time. So job security now becomes something that we're both grateful for, but something that we are also quite anxious about in this time. And so I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about that, because there was a question around job security and the reason people don't want to be seen as lazy because they are concerned about job security. How is this something that the organization is thinking about addressing as these anxiety levels are growing in colleagues?
Thanks a lot, Zintle, and thanks to the colleague that has posed that question. So, and I'll go back to what I've said. This is a journey for all of us, and it's mostly a new journey that we've embarked on. So if we have to think about, the physical office space, we moved from a space where, productivity used to be, bumps on seats. So if your line manager sees that you are there and when they send you an email, you respond within 2 minutes, then it is perceived that you are productive. Now, with that cultural imperative, now we've moved to a remote working environment where now the reality for most colleagues is productivity is being in every single meeting 8 hours a day and responding to all emails, between 6 and 10 in the evening. And we are starting to realize that, it's an untenable situation. It is not sustainable. Human beings are not machines. And the change starts at team level. And it's something that I said last week. It's something that I will say today, that, the change will start at team level. As teams within the organization, it's important that we have conversations around what will work for the team. It's not something that, I can change, but teams have to have those discussions. But what we will support as an organization is, as a stance is, we will welcome, decisions around teams where, I can quote a CIB where Zanele, works. I know CIB has made a policy decision that Wednesday it's no meeting 3 day. And we want to see more and more of those decisions, because they sit within clusters, they sit within teams, and they allow for the specific BU imperatives. But what really anchors this is, we want to have an organization where our colleagues can thrive, where there's a good mix of, productivity, which translates into, the bottom line, but also allowing our colleagues to have rest, so that they can be rejuvenated, they become creative, so they can give that all. So it's all about a balance, but it's not something that will come from a single individual. It's a collective effort, and we have to make sure that we get that balance right. So I hope it really answers the question, Zintle.
It certainly does. It certainly does. Doc, thank you so much for that. And I also look forward to having more of our guests who come on here, some senior members of the organization, I think also humanizing our leadership and showing this transition that we are making, not only as ABSA, but I suppose as financial services, corporates in general, around making sure that mental health is something that is not taboo to discuss. So we have just under 2 minutes left. Zanele, from you, 3 things. The top 3 things that you believe would be supportive to someone who is in a position of burnout, in a position of suffering with anxiety, panic, depression, exhaustion in the workplace. What are the ways in which you have been supported or wish that you were supported in this ongoing journey that you're on?
Great. Top 3 things for me. It's definitely being boundaried. I think, more than anything, it's so important for us to have those boundaries in place. And I'm not saying push back, but to draw a line with certain things, particularly around work, to prevent yourself from work-related burnout issues. And then the other thing that I leaned towards the most as well to help me along my journey was mindfulness that Doc spoke about. She actually introduced me to mindfulness, and so for that I'm eternally grateful. So mindfulness was one of the key tools and techniques that I have been using, and have built strong partnerships with the provider that we use as ABSA from a mindfulness perspective. And then the third one is from a work perspective. I think Doc spoke about it just now in answering the last question, is really around focusing on being outcomes based rather than outputs, So and that's what worked for me. As much as I was scared to speak up that I'm overwhelmed, but when it did not affect my performance in any way. In actual fact, it helped me go back and think about what are the key outcomes I'm trying to achieve? What is the strategy? This is the strategy we're trying to drive. These are the key outcomes, and I focused on that. So I was able to, focus my attention on the things that matter and look to the things that matter rather than clutter my space with so many things at the same time. I hope that helps.
advice. The things that matter, certainly central to the conversation that we're having, central to our physical, emotional, and mental health. And that is certainly something that we should be looking at both from a IQ point of view in our work output, but also from an EQ point of view in terms of how we look after ourselves. A conversation that never has enough time because there's so much to unpack. And I hope that you will join us as we continue to have this conversation as the ABSA group, not only in the month of July, which is Mental Health Awareness, but across the year, across platforms and mediums. So please stay tuned and please reach out to your support structures at this time to assist in any questions or interventions that may be needed around mental health for you. As ABSA Group, please again go onto our intranet, and if you are externally joining us, please do look out on websites around mental health where you can get assistance. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for participating, for your honest questions and comments. And again, let's do this. Let's continue doing this and let's break the stigma. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, Doc.
You too. Keep well. Bye.
Bye, guys. Well done. Thank you so much, Zanele.
Thank you so much, Zintle. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you so much. Doc, chat soon. Thank you so much. I can't blow